My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
And this is Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. Our first segment is What Happened Here Recently. Jason, today I want to tell you a story about something that happened recently to my players in the Play-by-Post game.
I love story time. Let's do it.
The story I want to talk about is my players had gotten to town and they had been abused a little bit by some great big sandworms and this guy named... Obviously. And then this Harlan Blackhand fellow. And so they were kind of in a bad way and they needed to pick up some items. But I didn't really want to just have let's go shopping little adventure, because first of all, that's really boring. Second of all, I was introducing some new players and I didn't want that to be the first thing that they saw about Dungeon World.
Well, that's a good reason not to do it. Yeah. I think every now and then it's okay to have a shopping time, but not when you have new people at the table, no.
Yeah, so I mixed it up a little bit and basically made up this character. I don't know if I necessarily made him up. I kind of stole him from a series of books called The Kingkiller Chronicles, and this character is the Tinker. Now, Tinkers are, they're in a lot of fantasy fiction, but I pretty much lifted him straight out of the pages. The players found him because they're looking for weapons, and they're in this fishing village, and I'm like, I don't know if you guys will be able to find weapons. You should probably look for somebody who travels and trades or something. They did a Discern Realities, and they found this Tinker, and he is basically wandering down the middle of the road, and he's shouting out as he leads his mules that have these packs on its back that are just completely overfilled. He's just shouting out, Tinker, Blade Sharpener, Cloth Weaver, Pot Mender. As they approach him, he kind of has this thing where he's more interested in doing trades than he is in just straight up buying and selling things.
Okay.
The players had previously acquired this unrefined nugget of gold, and I'd let them know that it would be more valuable if they refined it somehow. At the time, they weren't really quite sure how to do that, and they were like, well, we're about to be at the fishing village. Is there a way to do it there? I said, probably not. You probably have to go to a bigger town that has a forge, that's, a proper forge that could pull off that kind of refinement. But luckily, one of their party members who had just joined was an emulator, and little did they know that an emulator has this move. He can take raw materials and make them into things, and he asked me if he could use that to refine the gold, and I said, that sounds great. And he had a fantastic scene where he was doing that, and he's superheating the metal, and he's whisking it around to get all the impurities to drop out of it. And when it's finally all done, he forms it into this bullion, and it's pure gold, like the top quality you could ever get.
Okay.
And when they whip that out and show it to the Tinker, he's like, "There's no way I can buy this. Let's see what I can offer you." And he climbs up onto the mule. And the mule is just staring at them all, and it's just miserable because it's carrying this massive pack. And now the freaking Tinker's climbing into the pack, and the pack's so big that he falls inside the pack and is just throwing things out, and just offering things up. Pretty much got the shopping list from all the players and offered them either something, exactly what they wanted or close enough within reason. I was kind of looking at the value of how much I thought this gold was worth and versus the value of the items. And then I offered one of the players something a little bit different. Constant listeners of Discern Realities will remember a story about this poor fellow who kept dropping his weapon.
Oh, yes.
So he wanted a weapon, and the Tinker said, well, I have this stick, and that'll probably do for a weapon, but I think these gloves would suit you better. And he looks at the gloves and looks at the stick and says, is there something special about the gloves? He's kind of talking to me in a meta, and I'm like, well, maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to let you spout lore on them until they're in your possession, but you could spout lore on the Tinker and see if he's any good for his word. So he did, and this I lifted straight up out of that book I mentioned earlier, and it's a rhyme about Tinkers. And since he got the 10+, he got the full rhyme. Otherwise, I was going to give him a partial version of it.
Oh, okay.
This is the rhyme. A tinker's debt is always paid, once for any simple trade, twice for freely given aid, and thrice for any insult made. And the tinker is an honest man. I just tried to kind of impress upon him that, the tinker's good for it. If you give him this trade, it's going to go good for you. So not only did he decide to take the gloves, which turned out to be Straight out of the Dungeon World book. Velius's Gauntlets. Crafted in the name of Velius the Clumsy, Velius the Butterfingered, and Velius the Clawed, these gloves of simple cloth prevent you from dropping any object you don't intend to.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
So now he can't drop his weapon anymore, and we kind of had a little laugh about that.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, that sounds really neat. I like the way you incorporated like the little poem to be the answer to the spout lore, because it sounds like it was the sort of thing that maybe they might have heard when they were a kid or something like that, you know?
Right. Anyways, let's move on to our next segment.
Our next segment is What Should I Be on the Lookout For? Every now and then, listeners, we like to bring things to your attention that are not explicitly or directly connected to Dungeon World, but that you might like nevertheless. And today I'm really excited to have Jason Morningstar from Bully Pulpit Games with us to talk about his new game, Skeletons. Hi, Jason.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing very well. So tell our listeners what Skeletons is all about.
So Skeletons is a sort of a free-form role-playing poem, which is a weird way to describe it. But the idea basically is that you and your friends get together, you're going to play skeletons guarding a tomb, and you're going to tell the story not only of those skeletons, their backstories. You're going to learn over the course of the game who they were and why they were cursed to defend this tomb, and probably who's in that tomb, but also the sort of story of this tomb itself over thousands of years. And it's going to change and sort of become a character of its own. And by the time you're done, you have this incredibly well-realized, interesting tale of these really tragic guardians of this tomb.
That sounds awesome. So this is a show about Dungeon World. I have to ask, why do you think Dungeon World players would be interested in this?
Well, for a couple of reasons. The most obvious one is that there's a direct sort of line to the fantastic in this. You're playing animated skeletons that have been cursed by some evil wizard or something, and you're guarding a crypt. And the over the course of the game, that crypt is going to be, interfered with by necromancers and various monsters and fantastic things. So there's that piece of it, which is, it fits in thematically in a really interesting way. But the thing that may be more exciting to me is that you could actually sort of plug this into a dungeon.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And by the time you finish playing a game of the skeletons, you have this tomb that just lives and breathes with thousands of years of history. And it's going to be a cool location to explore from the other vantage point of adventurers.
I haven't played it, but when you've played it, what do you really love about it? Like, what about the experience just really gets you going?
So I think the killer app of the Skeletons is that it deals with the passage of time in a way that's counterintuitive and really fun. So as you play the game, you'll reach these decision points where you'll realize that 100 years have passed or 1,000 years have passed. And when that happens, you actually turn out the lights and just sit in meditative silence for a prescribed amount of time. And that sounds maybe a little hokey and dumb, but it is so cool. It's such a cool experience because, you can use that time, and it's never more than 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but so you can use that in whatever way you want. Some people, really, sort of immerse in the sort of the psyche of this tortured being that they're cursed to play. And other people just kind of think about what they're going to do next. And some people use that as just a moment to relax. And it's so interesting to see people react to that, because I think we're trained to go, particularly with really dynamic games like Dungeon World, where you're kind of always on.
Yeah.
You're expected to contribute and be creative all the time, to be told, okay, well, for the next 3 minutes, we're just going to breathe, nothing's going to happen, and that's okay, is very, very cool. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm very happy to see the way people embrace that.
Could you mind telling me about like just some of the different playbooks or character classes?
Yeah, sure. So when you play the skeletons, everybody chooses a character. And at the beginning of the game, you don't know who you are. You don't know who you were. You don't know what your backstory was. You just pick one based on their description. So you might play Rusted Shirt or Headless or Silver Torque. So let's take Headless as an example. The obvious feature of Headless is that Headless is missing his head or her head. And that's going to define the whole arc of that character. And over the course of play, you then answer questions about it. The questions that come up are going to help you to figure out who you were. One of the questions is who claimed your head and why? Who here did you once love? Questions like that. So over the course of play, you learn more about Headless, and eventually you're going to learn what your name was, how you came to be this undead monster. So there are the regular guys like Headless and Rusted Shirt, but there's also Outsider and Horror, which are something completely a little bit different. So there's a lot of variation, and the other piece to the characters is that you have the outline of a skeleton that you're expected to illustrate as you play. So there's a little bit of an arts and crafts piece to the game. You actually get to draw your cool stuff on your skeleton, and over time that's going to change. So that's fun. And then you also do the same thing with the tomb itself. Collaboratively, you actually draw it out, sketch it. And that's a really fun part of the game because it generates these neat artifacts that you can share.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to say about it?
No. I'm really happy that you had me on, and I hope people will check it out. It's a real interesting, meditative, creative exercise, and you really get a sense of the weight of years as you play, which is really fun.
Awesome. And where can people pick it up?
It's on DriveThru. You can look at Bully Pulpit Games on DriveThru RPG and get the PDF.
Awesome. Cool. We'll put a link. Well, thanks so much for coming on and telling us about skeletons, Jason.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.
All right, let's go to the next segment.
Our next segment is What Here Is Not What It Appears to Be.
Okay, so earlier today, listeners, David and I were having a conversation. At a certain point, we're like, hey, we should have this conversation on the podcast. That seems like a better place for it to take place. I was kind of complaining. I don't know if complaining is the right word, but I kind of feel like sometimes there are too many playbooks, okay? I love that there's this like huge creative community for Dungeon World that's making awesome, cool new things. But I think that some of the playbooks that are coming out, like, and there are a bunch, right? Some of the playbooks that are coming out maybe don't seem like they were play tested very much, or they have curious selections of moves that I don't understand, or they are just variations of fighter, wizard, and thief. I was basically saying that I think that people should consider making compendium classes instead of making whole brand new playbooks for something. I think a good, well-written compendium class can give you that flavor you're looking for, while still preserving like a very solid, well-tested core playbook or whatever playbook you're using. Why do these really awesome creative people insist on trying to have an entire brand new playbook when they could probably get their idea out an easier way by doing a compendium class?
I don't know if I necessarily agree with all of that, because I think that there's always room for improvement on anything, core playbooks included. I think they're really, really good, though. I think this should be mentioned that this was kind of spurred on by a discussion that was happening on G+, where we had been asked if we had talked about how to make our own classes. So you guys talk, we listen, and then we talk about it on the show.
Well, and my response was, if we were going to talk about something like that on the show, it would be me saying, hey, why don't you make a compendium class instead of a whole new playbook? I mean, look, I love all these awesome, there are a lot of really awesome playbooks out there. I've used a bunch of them. I'm particularly fond of the Collector and the Scion and the Initiate. There's a bunch of really good ones. In some of these playbooks, there are really like 4 moves that are actually like really distinct and unique and sound fun. And then there's a bunch of other moves in there that are kind of like I don't know if I really like that, or that doesn't really seem to fit, or it just doesn't seem that good. Why would I ever pick that? To me, that says, maybe a compendium class would have been a better move, because a compendium class, you have to just come up with 3 or 4 moves.
What if I'm already level 6 and all my easy leveling, quote unquote easy leveling, is out of the way, and it takes me forever to level now, and I've got my like super advanced moves that are about to happen, or I can pick this little compendium class.
Well, I think it depends on the compendium class, right? I mean, if it's like a really cool compendium class, you may not have that reticence, right?
Right.
Ostensibly, the reason why you took the compendium class at all was because you, A, did something in the fiction that allowed you to take it, which means it must have some sort of significance to you. And then B, in most cases, I think the best thing to do is to actually work with the GM on that and say, hey, this is what I'm angling for. I saw this compendium class over in this book or whatever. I'd like to take that. Or maybe we write a brand new custom compendium class just for your guy. Usually when you're like aiming towards taking a compendium class, it's because your interest in it is baked in already. It's not something that happens on accident.
Oh, yeah, I can see that for sure. But I'm still going to hold with, I think that there is room for making more playbooks. Like in the core playbook, there's not like a really good like assassin. The thief kind of has some moves that make him almost an assassin, but he's not really an assassin.
Well, that's fair, but I see that. I mean, I kind of feel like, I feel like you could take Thief and just have like an assassin compendium class, on top of it. Now, I actually think there's room for a full assassin playbook just because that echoes first edition D&D, and so I'm into that. But here's the one circumstance in which I think having new playbooks is a great idea, and that's when you're creating like a sort of brand new setting or a brand new sort of like skin for Dungeon World. I think that's a different circumstance. So you look at Grimworld, right? That needs its own playbooks, right? Because Grimworld is a certain type of setting and they're going for a certain type of thing. But as far as like plain vanilla crawl around the Dungeon World goes, the core playbooks with like maybe 2 or 3 like really nice additions are pretty sufficient.
I definitely can think of a circumstance that could use some custom playbooks. I think it would be fantastic if someone out there were writing playbooks for 1 GM and 1 player situations.
Oh, that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, because that's a freaking tough play. See Ramshackle Crow.
I like compendium classes. I like the way you have to earn them, like in the fiction. I like that. I think that's a fun thing. I haven't had players in recent months use them really, but when I had a more like very consistent long-term face-to-face game though, I had players who did compendium classes, and it was really fun to have that conversation. It was just another reason to have a conversation with the player about like where they want to see the game go and what kind of ideas they have for their character. I think a compendium class is a great tool for that. So that's another reason why I kind of prefer them. But
yeah, I've never engaged with a compendium class just because, like, I don't know what's out there, That is kind of a problem, yeah. I never get to a point in the fiction where it's like, oh, guys, there's a compendium class that's probably available here if you do X, Y, and Z. I think we'll probably have some more discussion on this in the future, but for now, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is What Here is Useful or Valuable to Me? So, speaking of compendium classes, I understand that you have one that you'd like to share with us.
I do, yeah. I've got compendium classes on the brain now. So I made a compendium class. This is a long time ago. I actually made this probably like 3 years ago when I first started doing Dungeon World, and I was super proud of it. The designers of Dungeon World, or Sage at least, made a point of saying he thought it was really awesome on the tavern.
Oh wow, that's awesome!
So I was like, oh cool. So that was all the validation I needed, right?
Yeah.
So it's called the Storysmith. So the fictional trigger for the Storysmith to take this class, this compendium class, is when you captivate an audience by reciting a fairy tale or legend, you may take the following move when you level up. That's how they're normally written, or at least they used to be written that way. So once you've done that, you can take this move, and then that gives you access to all the others, which is the compendium class thing, right? So the move, the basic move, is called Teller of Tales. Teller of Tales goes like this. When you tell a story, name it, and give the GM a brief description of what it's about. The GM will then tell you 1 or 2 effects this particular story can have on your audience. Then roll plus charisma. On a 10 plus, hold 2. On a 7 to 9, hold 1. Spend hold 1 for 1 to enact the effects. So it's a bit like the Druid's animal move, but instead of thinking of an animal and coming up with moves for the animal, you think of a story and you come up with the effects that the story can have on whoever hears the story, right? You kind of add those to your arsenal, right, as you think of them. So that's the basic move, Teller of Tales. Then the following moves become available as class moves. Compelling narrative. When you tell a story, name 1 person within earshot of you who must stop what they're doing and listen to it in its entirety, right? So that has a bit of that kind of piggybacks on the other move. Enchanting narrative. When you remember a story about a legendary magical item, name it and give the GM a brief description of what the item did and how it was used. The GM will then tell you what related magical qualities you can imbue upon a similar mundane item, then roll plus wisdom. On a hit, the mundane item takes the magical qualities described by the GM for the remainder of the scene. On a 10 plus as above, and the enchantment lasts until you next make camp. On a 12 plus as above, and you may spend an XP to make the enchantment permanent.
Oh, wow. That's super powerful.
Yeah, but with the XP trade-off, and you have to hit a 12 plus, but yeah. And then the last move is Heroes of Another Age. When you remember a story about a legendary hero, name it and give the GM a brief description of the hero's triumphs and tribulations. The GM will then tell you one special ability and one weakness related to this hero. Then roll plus wisdom. On a 10 plus, you take the special ability for the remainder of the scene. On a 7 to 9, you also take the weakness.
Okay, wow.
And that's it. That's Storysmith. This is developed mostly out of the fact that I hate the bard. I really do. I hate the bard. I like that the magic is in the tale, right? In every case. Like, it's all about, like, telling a story. And as you know, I'm a big fan of anything that helps develop the external fiction and like world fiction and that kind of thing. And so I really love this. Like, I just love, like, the potential here.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Anything else you want to say about it?
No, that's it.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Our next segment is What is About to Happen.
All right. Continuing our comic strip actual play featuring the adventures of Domenico Castafiel. When we last saw Domenico, he was at the party, and Iotho had just arrived, but he hasn't seen Iotho yet. He did a little magical show for the audience, and then also welcoming and saluting Iotho. And then he heard Iotho clapping behind him and saying, "Bravo, bravo." So that's where we pick up. In fact, we pick up directly with you turning around and seeing Iotho. Now, the question I'm going to have to ask you at some point, Domenico, is did you already know what Iotho looked like, or is this the first time you're seeing him?
It doesn't matter how many times you see Iotho Brugno. Every time is like the first time.
Okay, good. So you turn to see Iotho, and he's a very large man, and by large I mean he's very fat, and more than just fat, he's like impossibly fat. It doesn't even seem possible. He's so wide and big that you can't even see his legs, and his arms look almost like comically small, like against his body. He is being carried on a litter by about 12 well-muscled, half-naked, oiled men wearing bull masks. They're carrying him on this litter. They've got, the gold poles on their shoulders, and, litter's like a big, like, mattress platform thing, right? And he takes up the whole thing. He might be naked. You don't know. He's definitely not wearing a shirt. It's unclear if he's naked because all you see is just his great, massive stomach and just his little feet poking out of the bottom, like his little chubby toes, covered in gold rings and bangles. His body is covered in like oil, and he has a beautiful boy whore and a beautiful girl whore, like climbing, like literally climbing on him. They are also dressed in beautiful gold like strategically placed gold bangles and jewelry, right? They're like nipping at him with their teeth and like flattering him. And he's just like a great round, smooth, oily blob. No hair, not even any eyebrows. He's got like a little antelope mask on. And he's being carried in by these men who are clearly, like, all 12 of them, it's clearly like about to like break them, like, cause he's so heavy as they come in. And he's got his little arms and he's clapping, but it's just a little dainty clap because he can't bring them together fast enough and close enough to like clap really loudly. So it's just like, right. Bravo. Fantastic. I see the Castafiel house colors, but which Castafiel am I looking at right now? It's so hard to tell because of the mask, Is it Antonius? Is it Lucero Castafiel? Or perhaps it's young Urbina or Lugana playing a trick on me by dressing as a man. And then he puts his little hand up to his face because he thinks he made a really great joke just now. And he's like, As he laughs. What do you do?
After collecting my jaw off the ground and bowing ever so politely, I say to him, Iotho Brugno, it is I, Domenico Castifiel, but that would ruin... It would ruin the masquerade should I reveal my face to you. But may I say, you look positively radiant, like a great piece of refined gold that glistens in the light.
And he puts his hand up against his mouth again, being very demure.
I lean over to one of the men. Is he choking? Is he okay?
They're just, yeah, like they give you a reassuring nod. One of his men. You are most charming, Domenico Castifiel. Please come and join me on my platform.
I look for an empty space on the platform. Is there room?
At this point, the bull masked men, they lower him down. They're also covered in like great, gold bands and chains, and the kind of jingles and stuff as they kind of get on one knee so that you can kind of get up there. And he says, "There's room right here." He grabs one of the boy whores and just like kind of pushes him off, and he goes tumbling down to the ground. And the boy whore gets up and like gives you like kind of a mean look and just like stomps off. He's like, "Come, Domenico, join me."
I was not previously wearing gloves. I'm putting them on right now as I prepare to climb atop to mount this greasy, oily, hairless, slick flesh. And I'm just trying not to ruin my clothes as I climb close enough so that we can share whispers in confidence.
Good. He brings his hands together again as best he can and claps. And then the contraption begins to like raise up. You hear the straining. It's like, and you can even hear the little platform buckling a little bit, like, and it's raised up. And then the party continues. Everyone continues dancing. The people who are, the musicians begin playing, and everything is back in full swing. What do you do?
Oh my, this is quite the party that you have going on here. I must say, though, I would have thought that you may have contacted a proper magician than that poor trickster that you had down there.
It's like, I must confess that I am not too involved in the day-to-day planning of my fates and affairs. Are you not enjoying yourself, Domenico?
Oh, of course. I always enjoy myself at any of your gatherings. None more so than when I make myself comfortable within your bosom. As I'm literally within his bosom.
Oh, you're such a flatterer.
That's why you keep me around, isn't it?
Let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? Why have you come here? It would be very foolish of me to not ask the question when a Castifiel shows up at an affair like this. Castifiels always have ulterior motives, do they not?
I wouldn't say we're quite that conniving, but you speak true. I have come for more than just the enjoyment of your company.
Ah, now we're going to get to the heart of the matter. Why have you come, Domenico? And before you get a chance to answer, you see someone moving very quickly, like through the crowd, like they're making a beeline for the litter. And he's got his hands like down to his sides, and he's got a cloak around his arms as if he's clearly hiding something. And he's wearing a mask of a monkey. He's got like a gold monkey mask, and he's walking very, very quickly directly toward Iotho. What do you do?
I'm going to try and see if I can tell anything about him as he approaches, or see what he's carrying, trying to conceal.
Yeah, do a discern realities. You probably have just enough time to check things out.
6.
Okay, go ahead and mark an XP. Before you have a chance to react, this person gets within about 5 paces of the platform, and he takes out like a long, thin knife and walks up and just like slashes at one of the litter bearers in the front of the platform. Like just slashes at his leg, causing him to buckle, which causes the whole thing to kind of collapse forward, and Iotho rolls out of the litter. It sounds like a large bag of water, like hitting the cement, like pop, as he like lands. And you go tumbling out with him. And that's when you see the guy walk up to Iotho, and he grabs the only thing he can grab, which is like Iotho's nose and lips, right? Because he has no hair, and lifts up his great heavy head, and he has a knife, and he's getting ready to draw it across Iotho's throat. And I think that's where we'll leave the scene.
All right, well, that just leaves one final question. Who's really in control here?
That would be the Gauntlet Gaming community. You can find us on G+ by going to the community section of G+ and searching for the Gauntlet. We also have a meetup group called Gauntlet Hangouts, and we are on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, listeners. That's our show.
I once had a party deep in a dungeon for a long time, and they really needed to like get to a village to like resupply and stuff, but the circumstances really weren't such that they could leave. And so I had a guy show up wearing a long coat and a purple mask, and they were like,
"Oh, the Resident Evil 4 guy?"
Yeah, they were like, "Who's this guy?" And he's like, "What are you buying?"
I'll buy it at a high price.
Exactly, right.
Oh my god. I wish that guy was in every game. Like the game I'm working on now.
I just like this idea of like a guy whose like business model is such that like I randomly show up in like decrepit abandoned places hoping to sell things to foolhardy adventurers. Like that doesn't seem like a good business model to me, but
yeah. Yeah, right after you kill the dragon, standing behind him is this man in a trench coat.
Exactly. What are you buying?
I bet you need some health potions.